All right, again, good evening, everybody. My name is Carla Carter. I'll be the host for this evening's Basics and Foundations class. And again, it's not a formal lecture-based class. It's more of an informal, hands-on study session class that we have. It is for 2 hours normally, but sometimes we finish a little early depending on how fast we can get through with everything. So we're going to go ahead and do a prayer, the aims. Well, I'll do the aims first, and then we'll do a prayer, and then we'll jump straight into the lesson. So the aims of the school are as follows. First, to help you find and know Yahweh, our Elohim, as he really is and actually exists. Second, to form a nucleus of universal brotherhood of humanity in Yahshua the Messiah without distinction of race, nationality, sex, creed, caste, or color. Third, to investigate the unexplained spirit law or so-called law of nature and powers latent in man. Fourth, to encourage and promote the studies of the scriptures compared to religion, psychology, philosophy, modern practical and occult science. Fifth, to extirpate current superstition, skepticism, and ignorance. Sixth, to learn, know, and understand the operation of Yahweh's eternal purpose through the dispensations and ages. Seventh, to discern and avoid being deceived by Lucifer, the serpent, the devil, the dragon, or Satan and his demons operating the mystery of iniquity on earth through the dispensations of time. Eighth, to earnestly contend for the common salvation and faith which was once delivered unto the sons or children of Yahweh. Ninth, to make known that Yahweh from the beginning ordained there is no other name given among men whereby men must be saved, saving the name of Yahshua the Messiah. And tenth, to inherit eternal life now in the kingdom of Yahshua the Messiah with the hope of immortal glorification. Our watchword is peace, in the New Earth State. Our watchword is peace and our slogan is speak the truth. Let's see if we can get a prayer from Miguel. Do you want to lead us in prayer tonight, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Let us bow our hearts and minds for prayer, please. Dear Heavenly Father Yahweh, we are thankful again that you have allowed us to assemble in your name's sake. Yahweh, we continue to ask you to keep and bless each one of the sons, and that you make us perfect as you are, Father, that we can continue to learn, know, and understand your purpose and plan. We ask that you keep your hedge of protection around us, as in these last days that adversary is going crazy, and he is doing a great job. We also ask, Father, that you continue to guide and lead us as we endure these last days. We ask that you give us the eyes to see and the ears to hear as you perfect this gospel in each and every one of the sons. With these blessings and many others, we ask in your son's name, Yahshua Messiah, let us all say, hallelujah.
Hallelujah. All right, very good. All right, class, again, this is more of an informal study-based class, and so our assignment for the last 2 weeks was to read Genesis 11 through 20. And I was going to do some pop quiz questions, but it is a lot of chapters to go through, so we'll just kind of go through the chapters and discuss each of them. But before we do that, I want to kind of give the backdrop or the backstory or history as to why we're doing Genesis 11 through 20 right now. Who's going to be my readers for today? Who wants to help read? There could be more than 2 people, but who all willing to read chapters, because there's 10 chapters to read.
I will.
I'll read.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
I'll read.
Anybody else want to help read?
I'll help.
Thank you, Sherelle. All right. So let's go to our Bible. So we're on Moses' 3rd trip. So we want to discuss the 3 trips that Moses took up into the mountain, and we'll kind of give the backdrop of that and kind of give you the order in which we have been reading, which will set up the tone for the next part of the class session later on this evening. And so Yahweh called Moses up into Mount Sinai 3 different times after Yahweh delivered the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. Now, if we can go to Exodus, the 3rd chapter, one of my scripture readers. We won't get the first verse. We'll go to Exodus 3 and 3 and 10. Somebody read Exodus 3:10 through 12 for me.
All right.
Well,
Exodus
start
3 and
start
10.
the start the start the first verse and then drop down.
You want to start at the first verse?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of Elohim, even to Horeb.
All right.
The-
So Moses is on the backside of the desert, and he came to the mountain of Elohim, even to Horeb. And so he's at that mountain, and we're going to drop down to the 10th verse. This is when Yahweh's talking to Moses. The 10th verse. Go ahead.
10th verse. Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses said unto Elohim, who am I, that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, ye shall serve Elohim upon this mountain.
Now, this is when Yahweh first met with Moses at the burning bush, and this is his first encounter with Moses. And we know that Yahweh ended up giving Moses his name. This is the first man that Yahweh gave his name, was the only man Yahweh revealed his name to. And this is Moses at the burning bush. So this is the very first encounter Moses has, and Moses saying, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? And Yahweh said that this is going to be a token or proof to you that I sent you. When you bring the children of Israel out of Egypt, you're going to serve me on this same mountain. So there's an expectation for Moses to serve Yahweh on this same mountain. And we're going to look at it on the chart here. So this is where Moses was on the backside of the desert, right here. And this is the mountain that Yahweh was telling him that he was going to serve Yahweh at. This very mountain here, Mount Sinai, or the mountain of Elohim, even Horeb. And so it's the same mountain here. Now, so after all that happens, Yahweh sends Moses down to Egypt. Yahweh destroys Egypt. Yahweh brings the children of Israel out of Egypt all the way in April 15th, actually. And then April 15th, they leave out of Egypt, going to and through the Red Sea. They're wandering in the wilderness for a certain amount of days. And then June the 3rd is the first trip that Moses takes up into this mount that Yahweh speaks to him. And if somebody can go to Exodus, the 19th chapter for me. This is the very first trip that Yahweh calls Moses into the mountain, not the top, but into the mountain. So this is the first trip, Exodus 19:1.
Exodus 19:1. In the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. For they were...
Okay. Pause for just a second. So in the 3rd month, now remember, before the 19th chapter of Exodus, in the 12th and 13th chapter, Yahweh told Moses and the children of Israel, this shall be the beginning of months with you, the month April. So April is the 1st month. And so the 3rd month is June. And it says the same day. So the same day, if it's the 3rd month, the same day means it's the 3rd day. So June 3rd is when Yahweh, when the children of Israel came up out of Egypt on June 3rd. Keep reading.
For they were departed from Rephidim and were come to the desert of Sinai and had pitched in the wilderness. And there Israel camped before the mount.
Before the same mount. So they are in the wilderness of Sinai and they are camping before the Mount Sinai. So Yahweh said, this will be a token unto you, Moses. You're going to serve me on this same mountain. So now they're at Mount Sinai. And then the 3rd verse says what?
And Moses went up unto Yahweh, and Yahweh called unto him out of the mountain, saying, thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and an holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. And Moses came and called for the elders of the people and laid before their faces all these words with which Yahweh commanded him. And all the people answered and said, all that Yahweh had spoken, we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto Yahweh. And Yahweh said unto Moses, lo, I come unto thee in the thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto Yahweh. And Yahweh said unto Moses, go unto the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and be ready against the third day. For the third day Yahweh will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai.
Okay. So this is the very first trip that Moses takes up into the mountain. He's on the plateau of the mountain. He's not all the way to the top, but he is in the mountain. And Yahweh is telling Moses what to tell the children of Israel. So he goes to the children of Israel and tells them what Yahweh told him. And Yahweh told him to tell them to, clean up, because in 3 days he would speak to them from Mount Sinai, which is June the 6th, which is Pentecost. Same thing happened with the apostles. After Yahshua's death, burial, resurrection, he tarried the earth for 40 days. 10 days later, June 6th, is when the Holy Spirit was poured out on those in the upper room. And so you had 120 in the upper room. 0 has no value. And so you have 12 tribes of Israel around Mount Sinai, June 3rd, giving you the same thing that happened in the fulfillment. And so Yahweh is telling Moses what to tell them. So they begin to worship Yahweh. And the 20th chapter is when Yahweh spoke down the law and the commandments and the judgments and things like that in the 21st verse and 22nd, I think, so forth and so on. And then when you get to the 24th chapter, if somebody else can read the Exodus 24th chapter for me, Exodus 24:1.
Exodus 24:1. And he said unto Moses, come up unto Yahweh, thou and Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship ye afar off. And Moses alone shall come near Yahweh, but they shall not come nigh, neither shall the people go up with him. And Moses came and told the people all the words of Yahweh, and all the judgments. And all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words which Yahweh has said will we do. And Moses wrote.
That's fine. That's enough. And so then we're going to drop down to the 9th verse. So the 19th chapter was the very first trip. This is the second trip that Moses is going to take into the top, into Mount Sinai. He's going to go to the top now. But the first trip, Yahweh told Moses what to tell the children of Israel. The second trip is when Yahweh called Moses and the 73 people with him. 24:9, please, Amber. 9 and 10.
Okay. 24:9. Then went up Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. And they saw the Elohim of Israel. And there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of a sapphire stone, and as it were the body of heaven in its clearness. And upon the nobles of the children of Israel he laid not his hand. Also they saw Elohim and did eat and drink. And Yahweh.
The next verse says, Yahweh said, Moses, come up to the mountain and be there, blah, blah, blah. So Moses rose up, him and his minister Joshua. Now Yahweh said, go alone. Now, later on down the line, we'll talk about who Joshua, the son of Nun, was. We'll do the comparison once we get enough in us to be able to compare it. But Moses went up and his minister Joshua, so forth and so on. So you have the 74 people that saw the Elohim of Israel. So on the chart, you see the pictorial illustration. How they were on the plateau of the mount first. You have Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 of the elders. And they were told to tarry there until Moses came back. And he was in the cloud for 40 days in the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. And instead of them tarrying like they were told, they was like, I don't know what happened to this Moses. And so they went off and built this golden calf. In the fulfillment, Yahshua told his disciples, tarry there until I come again unto you. And they were supposed to just sit there and wait for power upon high. But Peter took it upon himself. He wants to replace Judas. And he took it upon himself for them to cast lots and all that kind of crap. And the lot fell upon Matthias and so forth and so on. But Matthias was not who Yahweh chose. It was actually the Apostle Saul. But anyway, it's on the fulfillment stuff. So then you have these 74 people on the plateau of the mount. This is Moses' second trip. He goes up to the top of the mount. If we can drop down, Amber, to, let's see, 15th verse.
Okay, 15th verse. And Moses went up into the mount, and a cloud covered the mount. And the glory of Yahweh abode upon Mount Sinai. And the cloud covered it 6 days. And the 7th day he called unto Moses out of the midst of the cloud. And the sight of the glory of Yahweh was like devouring fire on the top of the mount in the eyes of the children of Israel. And Moses went into the midst of the cloud and gat him up into the mount. And Moses was in the mount 40 days and 40 nights.
Oh, okay. Very good. Thank you so much. So remember when the children of Israel were first coming up out of Egypt and that cloud appeared, and it says that it was a cloud by day and it was a pillar of fire by night. And so where it says in the 17th verse, where it says, in the sight of the glory of Yahweh was like devouring fire on the top of the mount in the eyes of the children of Israel, that means it was evening time or nighttime when Moses went up into the cloud. Because it says in the very first part of this chapter, it talks about he rose up early in the morning. He, spoke the law to them. He did all kind of other stuff and made sacrifice. He did a whole bunch of stuff from that morning all the way. And so now that he's getting ready to go up, it's evening time now, and that's why the cloud was a pillar of fire, which is important in a second. In the 16th verse, it says, and the glory of Yahweh abode upon Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days, and the 7th day he called unto Moses out of the midst of the cloud. And we don't have any clues here what happened in the 6 days. So in the 16th verse, this is where we're supposed to stop and go to Genesis, the 1st chapter, to pick up what he saw in the 6 days, and the 7th he rest. And then the other 33 days, we would go back, we would continue to read in Exodus 25th chapter through the 31st chapter to see what all Moses saw in the second trip. So we've done that already. And that's why in Genesis, the 1st chapter, it talks about in the beginning was, Elohim created the heavens and the earth, blah, blah, blah. And the evening and the morning were the first day. The reason why he starts with evening, because when Moses went up into the mount in the first place to actually see this, it was already evening. Excuse me. So if somebody can go to, excuse me.
Go to what, Carla?
I'm sorry. 31, where he's coming down. Let's see. Well, that's too much. So let's just go to 34. 33.
It's the third chapter.
33rd and 1.
Okay. And Yahweh said unto Moses, depart and go up hence, thou and the people which thou hast brought up out of the land of Egypt, unto the land which I swear unto Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, unto thy seed will I give it. And I will send an angel before thee, and I will drive out the Canaanite, the Amorite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite, unto a land flowing with milk and honey. For I will not go up in the midst of thee, for thou art a stiff-necked people, lest I consume thee in the way. And when the people heard...
Pause for just a second. So this is after Moses and Yahshua comes down. They had built the golden calf. Moses was mad about it. He threw the table of stone down, so forth and so on. And so now Yahweh said he's going to send an angel before thee. Now then, in the, where is it? When Moses asked Yahweh, who is the angel? Let's see. Somewhere in here where Moses asked him who was the angel. So my whole point is, before the third trip, Moses had no idea who the angel was that Yahweh said that he was going to send before them. He had no idea that the angel was actually Yahshua, the son of Nun, even though Yahshua went up into the mount with him on that second trip and transfigured before him. And also, before they even got down out of the mount, told him what the people had already done. He still had no idea that that was the angel that Yahweh was going to send before him during the second trip. Now remember, Yahweh told Moses at the burning bush, this shall be a token unto you. After you bring the children of Israel up out of Egypt, ye shall serve me on this mountain. So it's got to be a round trip. So Moses has to be one with the understanding that Yahweh really did send him. And so then, we'll go to the 34th chapter of Exodus and start at the first verse.
And Yahweh said unto Moses, hew thee 2 tables of stone like unto the first. And I will write upon these tables the words that were in the first tables which thou breakest. And be ready in the morning, and come up in the morning unto Mount Sinai, and present thyself there to me in the top of the mount. And no man shall come up with thee, neither let any man be seen throughout all the mount, neither let the flocks nor herds feed before that mount.
Now Yahweh is giving more specific instructions. The very first trip, you had Moses going up on the plateau of the mount. He got instructions to tell the people to clean up the 3 days. Yahweh would speak to them. The second trip, he goes up with 73 other people, and he goes up higher to the top of the mount. Yahweh gave him the table of stones. He gave him the instructions to build a tabernacle. He saw the book of life in that second trip and showed him the days of creation by the pattern. So that's all Moses got in those first 40 days in the second trip. So now this is the third trip that Yahweh is telling him to hew out 2 tables like the first ones that he broke, and be ready in the morning to come up into the top of the Mount Sinai again to present himself there. And nobody else could be there, even in front of the mount. He didn't want to see anybody else, just Moses and Moses alone. And he hewed out 2 tables of stone like into the first, so forth and so on. And it says that he was, and the cloud descended upon the, Yahweh descended in the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name of Yahweh in the top of the mount. Moses goes up into the mount, and he was up into the mount for 40 days and 40 nights again. Where is that at? Here we go, 28th verse. And he was there with Yahweh 40 days and 40 nights. He did neither eat bread nor drink water, and he wrote up on the tables the words of the covenant and 10 commandments. And so then it says, but it doesn't say what he saw in those 40 days. So then it goes to say, and it came to pass when Moses came down from the mount with the 2 tables of testimony in Moses' hand, when he came down from the mount, Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone while he talked with him. So what did Moses see in those 40 days and 40 nights that he was in the garden? In the mount. And so this is where we would go to Genesis, the second chapter, and go all the way to the second chapter of Exodus. And this is what Moses saw, part of what Moses saw in this third trip. So that's why we're in Genesis now, because we're picking up what Moses saw in this third vision. So we already read 2 through 10. Our assignment was to read 11 through 20. And then the next time will be to read 21 through 30. And we'll finish up Genesis. And once we finish up Genesis, we'll continue in Exodus and keep on going through. He also saw all the way down to the Messiah. Moses saw from the beginning all the way to the end. And so this is why in Genesis, the second chapter, instead of Moses saying that Yahweh created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, now he has a profound knowledge and understanding of it. And it said that things were created in the day that they were created. So we're in Genesis, the 11th chapter. So we're going to go chapter by chapter and break them down and then we'll see how much time we have left to do the rest of it. So if we can start at Genesis, the 11th chapter, pick up where we left off last time we met with what Moses saw the third trip. Does anybody have any questions with the order in which these things are read or done or put together?
What verse did you say stop at in the 24th of Exodus and go to Genesis 2nd?
16, I believe, wherever it says 6 days colon, right when you see the colon, you go straight to Genesis, the first chapter, to pick up what happened in 6 days. I think it's the 16th verse.
Okay.
Yep, 16th verse of 24th chapter.
Okay, thank you.
All right, who wants to read Genesis 11th chapter for me?
Genesis 11 and 1.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, let us build us a city in a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad the face of the whole earth. And Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men builded. And Yahweh said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So Yahweh scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore, the name of it is called Babel, because Yahweh did there confound the language of all the earth. And from thence did Yahweh scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived after he begat Arphaxad 500 years and begat sons and daughters. And Arphaxad lived 35 years and begat Salah. And Arphaxad lived after he begat Salah 403 years and begat sons and daughters. And Salah lived 30 years and begat Eber. And Salah lived after he begot Eber 403 years and begat sons and daughters. And Eber lived 430 years and begot Peleg. And Eber lived after he begot Peleg 430 years and begat sons and daughters. And Peleg lived 30 years and begot Reu. And Peleg lived after he begot Reu 209 years and begot sons and daughters. And Reu lived 230 years and begat Serug. And Reu lived after he begat Serug 207 years and begat sons and daughters. And Serug lived 30 years and begat Nahor. And Serug lived after he begat Nahor 200 years and begat sons and daughters. And Nahor lived 29 years and begat Terah. And Nahor lived after he begat Terah 119 years and begat sons and daughters. And Terah lived 70 years and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abraham. Terah begat Abraham, Nahor, and Haran begat Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity, in Ur of the Chaldees. And Abraham and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife, Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and the father of Iscah. But Sarai was barren. she had no child. And Terah took Abraham his son, and Lot the son of Haran his son, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, and Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go to the land of Canaan, and they came unto Haran and dwelt there. And the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran.
All right, very good. All right, so from the very beginning, if you read the last verse, it talks about the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and from them Yahweh separated the nations, because this is right after the flood, and they came out of the flood. You only had those 8 people that came out of the flood, and he told them to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Same thing he told Adam. And so if you notice, you only have one being, talked about from each person, even though they had sons and daughters and things like that. And if you also notice, the time frame that they lived started decreasing as well, because there was no more need for the man to live that long, because the only reason why we even held him around that long anyway is to replenish the earth and multiply the way that Yahweh wanted them to multiply. Anyway, does anybody have anything that they have with the 11th chapter of Genesis that they want to share that they saw or that Yahweh showed you?
I just also noticed how it only talked about one of the children, like one of the offspring from each one. And I thought that's something that just stuck out, because it would name all of them like it normally does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So why were they trying to build a tower up the sky? Anybody want to tell me that?
Because of the flood. So, in defiance, they didn't want it to, talking about, well, if Yahweh flood the earth again, we're going to build a tower so that way we can deliver ourselves, so to speak.
Okay. I'm referring to the 4th verse where it says, and they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. Okay. So anybody else got anything as to why they were trying to build a tower to reach heaven? Who was it that was building this tower? It wasn't everybody. Who was it that was building the tower?
Nimrod, right?
Mm-hmm. 5th verse.
So it was the children that they named that built the tower?
The children of men. Remember, right. So remember, before the flood, Yahweh, it said that the sons of Elohim went into the daughters of men. Remember? Mm-hmm. Y'all remember that part, right? Okay. So follow me on this one then. Now, when we looked at who the sons of Elohim were, and then the children of men, after Cain killed Abel, matter of fact, when Cain was born, Eve said, I've gotten me a man, right? So Cain was referred to as a man. Now, after Abel was killed or murdered, and she said Seth was a son of Elohim. And so all the children that came forth from Seth were considered the children of the sons of Elohim. The daughters of men were the descendants of Cain. Okay. Now, remember when we went back over to Revelations, the 12th chapter, and we saw how John was looking at the same thing Moses was looking at, and John was looking at the adversary waiting to devour the woman's child as soon as he was born. Mm-hmm. Y'all would put the mark on Cain. And so that was Satan that was in Cain and all of his descendants as well. So that's why it became evil and more evil, more evil. And so you can't drown the satanic spirit. And so right after the flood, after Noah and them got ready to come out of the ark, it said that Yahweh said within his heart that the man's heart is evil continually. He will not flood the earth anymore. What do you mean the man? I thought you destroyed all the men that had evil hearts. it wasn't the men that were evil, it was those satanic spirits that were cast to the earth. And so those same spirits, they were in the children of men trying to build a tower to reach back to heaven so they could try to get back into heaven, but their place was not found anymore in heaven. That's why they were trying to build this tower. That was their concept of their thinking, to try to make, that's why it said to reach unto heaven. It didn't say to the sky, it said to reach unto heaven. So that's what they, and it was the children of men doing that. So those were those satanic spirits that were trying to make their way back into heaven. All right, cool. So everybody follow that? Y'all good on that? The children of men and how, got it? Okay. Because a lot of it's going to tie into the things that we've been discussing over the last few classes anyway, because it's all kind of linked to each other. All right, so then Yahweh said, let us go down and confound their language.
One quick question, please.
Yes. Yes.
My understanding about the sons of Elohim and the children of men is that I had a chart with can you say that the children of Elohim is the bloodline? That's the word I always use, and I was wondering if you would agree with that. See, it's the bloodline that was leading to Yahshua Messiah. Those are the children of Yahweh. The sons of men are the ones who sprung off of that, and I was just wondering, would you say that's right? That's the children of men that's not in that bloodline at that time? Would I be right?
You could, but actually all of the bloodline comes from Adam, you know, which Cain came from Adam too. So you could, I see what you're saying, but yeah, the bloodline of Seth or the bloodline of Shem, yeah, because that's true. All of the bloodline that came forth from Shem leads you all the way to the Messiah.
Right.
But
so
either way, Yahweh said there's. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just saying that bloodline, like it was from all the way from Adam, and then there was the righteous bloodline that went to Seth, which would bring, which Yahshua would come, and then that it was just a few people, you know, like just a man and his in the family, right? Well, anyway, when it got to Egypt, and they left out of Egypt, that's when that bloodline exploded into, 603,000 times 5, or 603,000 times 4 or 5. And those were the children of, those are the children of Yahweh. And those that were not of that bloodline, that was the children of men. That's what I'm saying. Would that be right?
Not necessarily, because because Moses is looking at a vision that Yahweh was showing him, and there's a reason why. And John saw the exact same thing and said that the dragon was cast to the earth, and his tail drew a third part, and it said he was waiting to devour the woman's child as soon as he was born. And so as soon as she had Cain, because John saw Cain being occupied by Satan, she said, "I've gotten me a man." And then, of course, after, Seth was a son of Adam, the son of Elohim, and stuff like that. So Seth was in type of the righteous lineage. I wouldn't say that it was a righteous lineage, because the scripture said there's none righteous, no, not one. But there is, what Yahweh's showing is the mystery of iniquity side by side with the mystery of Yahweh, the mystery of righteousness. Those two mysteries going down side by side, Jacob and Esau, Cain and Abel, and so forth and so on. Ham being cast out too. So when you look at what John is looking at, Satan's tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven, and then Moses looking at Ham being a third part of the three sons that Noah had, and he said, "Cursed be Canaan," which was Ham's son. All of those that came forth from Ham, they were cursed, and because Yahweh said, "I would visit the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation." And so all of that iniquity, the mystery of iniquity, was displayed through the descendants of Ham. Because if you trace the lineage in the 10th chapter of Genesis, you have the ones that was in Nineveh. You've got Nimrod, which built the city of Babel. You got the Philistines, you got the Egyptians, you got the Canaanites, the Hivites, the Perizzites. All of those descendants came forth from Ham, and Yahweh showed how he felt about them, and they carried out the mystery of iniquity in the purpose and principle. Because if you look at those 603,550 men over the age of 20 that came up out of Egypt, they all died off because they sinned and they were unrighteous too, even though they came forth from the seed of Abraham and they were considered the, children of Jacob or the children of Israel. And so they still were killed off because they sinned too. But as far as the mystery of righteousness and the mystery of unrighteousness, that is displayed through Ham's descendants. And that's why Yahweh showed Moses those different descendants and things like that. But bloodline is not a bad word to use. Not at all.
Thank you.
No problem. All right. Let's see. Then Yahweh confounded their language. All right. And then, of course, it traces down to Shem. So now it's taking up the generations of Shem, showing that this is where Abraham came from. So the Jews or the Hebrews came from Shem. And it talks about the chapter before this that the Gentiles came from Japheth. And so you got the Jew and the Gentile. Well, what about the third part that came from Ham? They were cursed. Cursed became them. That's like the mystery of iniquity or those satanic spirits that were cast out in type and in principle. All right, cool. So now we see where Abram and his father, they left his father, Ur the Chaldees, and went to Haran and Canaan land. So the next chapter, who wants to read the 12th chapter for me? I'll break this one down.
I read it.
I'd like to ask a question also.
Yes.
Okay, and going back to what the gentleman was just talking about, the generations of the flesh coming on down. And can you explain, like in Matthew's, the first chapter where it talks about the book of the genealogies of Yahshua the Messiah, the son of David and the son of Abraham, and it picks up with Abraham begot Isaac and goes on, so on. And I remember, I can't get my notes on it, but I remember years ago we had worked with it in our class dealing with the 63 generations of the flesh. And I know we used Genesis, what we were just working with tonight, with Adam and the 11 generate. I don't know if it's 10 or 11 with Adam. I think it's 11 with Adam. And then when you get over to Shem, and after the flood, there's 11 generations, 10 generations. I'm not sure which one. I don't have my notes. So I'm thinking of that, and I'm trying, with the statement that the young man was saying about the righteous generation or the righteous lineage, like you, I don't know if you would say righteous, but the generations of the flesh coming on down to Yahshua. Because one of the things that I do remember, how that Yahweh always had a how would you put it? It's like a wheel within a wheel, because even though we can use the priesthood, even though the priesthood was the Levitical priesthood, the high priest could only come from Aaron. Yes, from the Aaronite priesthood, which was the high priest. And they had different levels even in the priesthood. So you see the same thing, even like, I know I'm trying not to be confused. I'm sorry if I'm confusing everybody. What I was trying to say is that, like, even within the Hebrews, because the Hebrews, as you stated, that lineage starts with Shem, right? Is that correct?
Well, the Hebrews come from Shem.
Right.
Even like with Abraham being a Hebrew, the Ishmaelites aren't considered Hebrews, even though Ishmael is Abraham's son.
Right. Okay.
So the children of Israel. No. I know what you're saying. So the children of Jacob. So you have Abram was a Hebrew. You had Isaac being a Hebrew because him and his, sister, whatever. But the child that he had with Hagar, with the Egyptians, Ishmael was a whole nother nation. Just like with Jacob and Esau, there were two different nations in her womb, even though Rebecca and Isaac both were Hebrews. They both were of the same family, but there were still two nations that were separated in her womb. So how do you reconcile that then? Why would Esau not be considered a Hebrew if You know, so if you're looking at the lineage as far as that goes, the promised seed was going to be through Isaac. Not that the promised seed was Isaac, the promised seed was the Messiah. But you have, and it said, Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. And so it's not that, you know, Shem and everybody came forth from Shem, and Abraham, everybody came forth from Abraham, because Terah worshiped idols. Terah worshiped God besides Elohim or El Shaddai. He worshiped idols. He didn't even worship El Shaddai. And so he wouldn't be considered, you know, a son of Yahweh if that's the case, because he wasn't even worshiping El Shaddai, even though they didn't know his name. Abram worshiped El Shaddai because Yahweh, Elohim appeared unto Abram and he knew him as El Shaddai. Terah and the rest of them worshiped idols. So even though Terah came forth from Shem, that doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, he's a right there, that's the righteous lineage of Shem and all that, you know, things like that. It's only the ones that Yahweh actually called. And that's why he's specifically given different names. And then in Matthew, like you were talking about, he's kind of breaking down the 63 generations till you get to Joshua. And it's really 62 if you read in the book, but there is a 63rd generation. But I would have to go through the Elohim book to pull that out. It would take me forever tonight to try to go through it and put it together in my mind about the 63 generations. But to, I guess, sum everything up, Ishmael and Jacob and Esau came from Isaac, right? And Yahweh changed Jacob's name to Israel, and it was from him that the children of Israel were born. And all of those that came forth from Jacob, those were the ones that Yahweh counted as his son, that he called his son singular, out of the land of Egypt. Not Isaac, not anybody else from Isaac, not Esau, not Ishmael. It was only the children of Jacob or the children of Israel that Yahweh had chosen to be his people, that Yahweh called them to be near and dear to his heart, even though Abraham had more children. He even had more children by Keturah. But those weren't counted, though. It was only through Isaac, and the only reason that was like that is because through the children of Israel, the Messiah was to come. That's the only thing that made them be the ones that Yahweh had chosen, because that's how Yahweh had it set up from the beginning, that that's where he would come through, that lineage. Because Messiah, at the end of the day, was the promised seed. It had nothing to do with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, or nobody else. Those are just principles to lead you to the reality of it. So, but yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Not at all. Any other questions or comments?
Just a quick comment. How it says, in Isaac shall thy seed be called. So yeah, you're right. It wasn't Esau, but to me, it seemed like Esau broke off and became another one of those children of men. But in Isaac shall thy seed be called. So that's the righteous one. And to me, that's what I understand now. What broke off, like not only Esau, but others, that those became the children of men. But thank you.
Right, in principle. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, in principle, those will be considered the righteous lineage. And in principle, Esau will be considered the unrighteous, because Yahweh is showing the mystery all the way down. Cain and Abel, Jacob and Esau, so forth and so on. Isaac and Ishmael, you know, different things like that, so forth and so on, because it's pointing up to the Messiah and his Yahweh's only begotten son, Yahshua, and the son of perdition. You have to have it playing down in the flesh too, all the way down through the ages and dispensations. That's what one of the angels talks about, the mystery of iniquity, through the dispensation of time. And so you have to see him operating in different, you know, things like that through time. Just like even now on this side, there is not one that is a Jew outwardly anymore. We'll even see the Abraham now, even though not with the flesh, but at the end of the day, Abraham wasn't that physical man. That was Yahweh's spirit manifested as the soul of Abraham. And so when the rich man died, Abraham then took the body off, but Father Abraham was right there speaking to him, and he recognized who that was, even though he didn't have a body on. The rich man didn't either. So it's the spirit that Yahweh manifested in these different vessels, a vessel of honor and a vessel of dishonor. And so it's not that in principle you have a lineage of righteousness and then a lineage of unrighteousness, but there's only one righteous, and that's, you know, Messiah. And so we all got to be in the same body, and that's what the gospel does. It cleans you up and brings you into that one body. So yeah. But no, I follow what you're saying. No, that's
Hallelujah and thank you.
absolutely. All right. Any other questions or comments?
Yes, I have one more dealing with Abraham being called out of the land of Ur or Chaldees, and that area that he's being called up out of is Babylon or Shinar or Ur. All of those are areas in Mesopotamia, which is the area in which Nimrod, his kingdoms were built, such as Babel and Erech, and I'm not pronouncing them correctly, but Uruk and Akkad, and all of those cities that Nimrod was ruler over. This is in the same area and that's where the Father called Abraham out of. And it's something in those areas also in modern day, like I said, it's the southern region of Mesopotamia, and it's really in Iraq. The areas that they talk about, like Erech and Akkad, those are in central Iraq and southeast Iraq. That's modern day. And like Babel, that all of those areas is in Iraq, and we see that they're always in the news. These Iraq and Iran, these areas are always in the news. So I just want to point that out.
Yep. Yep. So you have the Ishmaelites, and you have all those nations that Yahweh left for Israel to contend with. They're still there too. But yeah. So it looked like when we read the 11th chapter that Terah made the decision to leave Ur of the Chaldees and go into Canaan land. He took Abram, Sarai, and Lot, his son's Haran's son Lot, and went to Canaan land and dwelt in Haran. But now, in the 12th chapter of Genesis, Yahweh is telling Abram to get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. And so, who wants to read the 12th chapter for me?
I got it. Okay. 12th chapter. Now Yahweh has said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So Abram departed as Yahweh had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. And Abram passed through the land unto the place of Sichem, unto the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. And Yahweh appeared unto Abram and said, unto thy seed will I give this land. And there builded he an altar unto Yahweh who appeared unto him. And he removed from thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west and Hai on the east. And there he builded an altar unto Yahweh and called upon the name of Yahweh. And Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south, and there was a famine in the land. And Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. And it came to pass, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarai his wife, behold now, I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, this is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. Say, I pray thee, thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. And it came to pass that when Abram was coming to Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman, that she was very fair. The princes of Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abram well for her sake, and he had sheep and oxen, and he asses and men servants and maid servants, and she asses and camels. And Yahweh plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, What is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why saidst thou, She is my sister? So I took her to be my wife, and now behold, thy wife, take her and go thy way. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, and his wife and all that he had.
Exodus 12th chapter, very good. Anybody see anything in that one? Or any questions about this chapter?
So I saw something. So when Abraham, this is Latara from Tampa. How you doing, everybody? When Abraham went down into Egypt, also Yahweh I think can she read it again? Where he said that he gave him she asses, like Yahweh gave him things and told him to go when the Pharaoh told him to go and leave.
That's the 16th verse or 15th. I'll start 15th verse. The princes of Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abram well for her sake, and he had sheep and oxen, and he asses and men servants and maid servants, and she asses and camels. And Yahweh plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, What is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why saidst thou, She is my sister? So I took her to be my wife, and now behold, thy wife, take her and go thy way. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, and his wife and all that he had.
Okay, so Pharaoh gave Abraham all those things before he left. I didn't know that. So it's like the same thing repeating. I always say like Genesis and Exodus are like brothers and sisters. Like you can see the same thing repeating in Genesis and Exodus, but you see it starting like Exodus first, and then you see the repeat of Genesis. I never knew that. He came out with more. I'm sorry.
Right, exactly. No, go ahead. No, good.
No, I was just saying he came out with more because he went down there because of a famine, and then he left with more, and then Pharaoh just basically he spoiled the Egyptian.
Exactly. Now, if you also notice too, where it said Abram left Haran and took all the souls with him too down into Egypt, and the souls that he had gotten in Haran. And remember when Jacob got ready to, at the famine when Israel was in Canaan land, it said 70 souls went down into Egypt. So you got the same thing, and then the exact same thing that Abram was going to have to offer up to Yahweh in the 15th chapter of Genesis is what he got out of Egypt. The she-ass, the goat, the she-goat, and the heifer, and all that he got to offer up, that's what he got out of Egypt. Same thing with the children of Israel. The same thing they were going to have to use to worship Yahweh and build that tabernacle is what they got out of Egypt. Now, to the point that Sherelle was making a minute ago, Abram was called out of Ur of the Chaldees, and if you look at what that's in Babylon, look at what Babylon stands for. It means confusion. Babel means confusion, because Yahweh combined their tongue. Now, on the 40 plate chart, even on this chart here, you can see how in the beginning it was chaotic. You have chaosis, and then you got, Yahweh bringing it forth and so forth and so on. Now, Abraham represents Yahweh in his pure spirit state. Isaac represents Elohim, and Jacob represents Yahshua the Messiah. And what I mean by that is this. Yahweh came out of chaosis, or out of the earth was without form and void. It was, no form or anything like that. So Abram has to come from chaosis or chaotic state of Babylon or Babylon. And when the famine came, he had to go down into Egypt and came back to the same place where he pitched his tent in Bethel. Then there was a famine in Isaac's time too, and Yahweh told him specifically, do not go to Egypt. he had to stay in the land of Canaan and go to the Philistines in Gerar. Abram did that too, though. Abram went down to Egypt, and he also went down to Gerar. Abram did everything. Yahweh told Abram to walk the length and the breadth of the land, and all that he sees, he will give it to him, right? Yahweh saw this thing in this statement, in the scripture that Yahweh saw the whole creation from start to finish before he stepped into shape and form to carry it out. But when he stepped into shape and form to carry it out, there was no more reason to search it out and go through. It had already been done here. The saving was done back here. He stepped into shape and form to carry it out from this state, though. That's Isaac, right? And then Jacob, there was a famine in his time too. He had to go down into Egypt too, but he was actually bound down in Egypt. And so when he comes down, Jacob represents Joshua. So when he comes down, he is bound to keep the whole entire law before he can actually be freed. And how were they freed down here? Was by the blood of the Lamb. And so Abraham represents Yahweh in his spirit state. Isaac represents Elohim, and Jacob represents, or Israel represents Joshua in that. And so that's why Abram had to be called from Ur of the Chaldees first. And it looked like it was Terah's decision. But in the 15th chapter of Genesis, you'll see what Yahweh said, I called thee out of the land of Ur of the Chaldees. And it didn't have nothing to do with your daddy, even though it looked like that's the reason why they left Ur with his daddy, but that was Yahweh doing all of it. But we'll get to the 15th chapter, hopefully, anyway. But very beautiful point, though. Very beautiful point. What about the 3rd chapter? I thought that tip with me every time I read it. The 3rd chapter says, and I will bless them, plural, that bless thee, and curse him, singular, that curses thee. Who is the him that he's talking about that he's going to curse? Satan. That's the only one that's going to try to curse Abram. I just thought that was so funny when it said bless them and then curse him, that curse thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. Not by you, but in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And so Abram parted. So the 8th verse also. And said, he removed from thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west and Hai on the east. And there he builded an altar unto Yahweh and called upon the name of Yahweh. That is not true. That's how you know this is Moses' vision. This is what Moses saw on the 3rd trip, because nobody knew Yahweh's name until Yahweh gave it to Moses in the burning bush. Abraham didn't know Yahweh's name. He didn't call upon the name of Yahweh. He called Yahweh by El Shaddai. But Moses put Yahweh's name in there because now when Moses is writing this, he knows El Shaddai's name now. And so that's why it says, and he called upon the name of Yahweh. But that's actually not true. Abraham didn't call upon the name of Yahweh. He called upon El Shaddai. But Moses is inserting the correct name since he knows it now as he's writing this. All right, cool. Any other points anybody want to make in 12th chapter before we keep reading? Okay. Cool. All right. 13th chapter.
13th chapter. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. And he went on his journeys from the south even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first. And there Abram called on the name of Yahweh. And Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. And the land was not able to bear them that they might dwell together. For their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was a strife between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and the herdsmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanites and the Perizzites dwelled then in the land. And Abram said unto Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdsmen and thy herdsmen. for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt takest the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before Yahweh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of Yahweh, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zor. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain and pitched his tent towards Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before Yahweh exceedingly. And Yahweh said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, lift up now thine eyes and look from the place where thou art northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land which thou seest to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it and in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. Then Abram removed his tent and came and dwelt in the groves of Mamre, which is in Hebron, Hebron, and built there an altar unto Yahweh.
All right, very good. Genesis the 13th chapter. All right. Anybody have anything that stood out to them in the 13th chapter that you want to discuss?
Just one thing that caught my eye, the 17th verse, where he says, he told Abraham to arise and walk through the land in the length and the breadth of it. He's going to give it unto thee. It kind of drew my attention to Ephesians, the 3rd chapter, in the 18th verse, where he talked about, after, through receiving the Holy Spirit, you may be able to comprehend with all sons what is the breadth and length and the depth and the height. So this land that Abraham is receiving, and then the seed is going to be receiving, is Canaan land, which is likened unto the most holy place of heaven. And, that's, pointing to the fruits of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit in you, with this knowledge and wisdom and understanding of the Yahweh's purpose, pattern, and plan. And, Ephesians is just basically corresponding to that, what's the breadth and length and whatnot.
Very good. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, it just shows too how Lot was like, he chose the land that he was physically looking at. And, because it was, well watered and a good land, that's why he chose to go that way. And it was after that fact that Yahweh, told Abram that all that he sees, he would give to him. And that's what stuck out to me, how that, even now, man goes after what only his eyes can see.
Now, if you remember, when Yahweh first came in the 12th chapter of Genesis, he told them to get thee from thy kindred and from thy father's house. So he took Lot as well, right? That's his kindred, though, but still, he still took Lot anyway. And it wasn't until Yahweh caused a separation between Abram and Lot. And as soon as they were separated, that's when Abram was shown his inheritance. Sometimes Yahweh tells us all the time to separate ourselves from these people that we're dealing with, and we still make excuses. We still try to hold on to them, and we're having a hard time Well, Yahweh can't give you your blessing if it's not meant for that person to enjoy it with you. It's not until Yahweh actually causes separation and you get away from these people when you start flourishing and start getting the blessings that Yahweh got set for you sometimes. That's what I always used to look at that like, oh, wow. Because I always want to, because we take the same traits psychologically and spiritually, so I always want to insert myself and see where I am in this pattern too sometimes. And sometimes that's the thing that Yahweh's showing us. Now, is there anything in this chapter that y'all can show me that proves that Moses actually wrote this?
Mm. Mm.
How do we know Abraham didn't write it? Because I heard that there was a book of Abraham. How do we know Abraham didn't write this?
Hmm.
Anybody?
I would say that, well, Moses is using the name, Yahweh. You talking about just this chapter specifically, or you talking about the entire book of Genesis?
Mm-hmm. Just this chapter specifically. Right. Yeah.
Is it because he mentioned Yahweh destroying Sodom and Gomorrah?
Well, no, Abraham saw Yahweh destroy Sodom and Gomorrah.
Because I thought, I remember. I can't remember if it was this chapter, but I remember thinking about it where he spoke in future tense. I can't remember what verse it was. I don't even know if it was this chapter, but he said something about which is here to this day, or it was something about he referenced something in the future where he was, I can't. Let me find it.
I know what you're talking about, but I don't know if that's in this chapter or not. Anybody else want to take a stab at it?
Is it in Genesis, the 13th chapter, right? You're talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. In the 10th verse, it says, and Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere before Yahweh destroyed. It ain't been destroyed yet. Before Yahweh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of Yahweh. How would Abraham know about the garden of Yahweh?
Boom, ding, 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 ding. That's it right there.
Of Egypt. Okay.
That's the verse I was talking about.
So you were on the right verse, but you picked the wrong part, because Abraham could have written this after Yahweh showed him that he was destroyed. Because remember, Yahweh did show Abraham, and Abraham did see Sodom and Gomorrah be destroyed. Abraham could have written this after Yahweh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, but where do we find where Abraham saw or knows anything about the garden of Yahweh? Moses was the one that Yahweh showed in the 24th chapter of Exodus, the garden of Yahweh. Moses was the one that saw Yahweh put Adam in the garden, eastward in the garden, in his second trip that he took into Mount Sinai. So this is Moses writing this. And that another thing too, like it was said too, he's using the name of Yahweh. Abraham didn't know Yahweh's name. He died not knowing Yahweh's name. So Abraham could not have written this at all. So very good.
Right.
All right,
That was,
all right.
It was a question I wanted to ask. How is that a translation? Because it said when Abraham called upon the name of Yahweh, but Abraham didn't know the name of Yahweh. So what is that? What was there?
It's
Was
not
it
in this
El
translation. El Shaddai. It was El Shaddai. So when Moses wrote all of this, Moses already had Yahweh's name by this time. Because Moses knew Yahweh told him who he was at the burning bush and told him what his name was. And so Moses is writing all of this after everything had transpired. After he came down out of the third trip, this is when he wrote all of this about Abraham and stuff like that. So when he saw all of this, he's inserting the proper name for El Shaddai. So Abram called upon El Shaddai, but because Moses knows El Shaddai's name, he's putting the name in there now because he knows how important the name is, because Yahweh showed it all of that to him in the vision, and he told the children of Israel that they had to call upon the name of Yahweh. You should not take away the name of Yahweh and bring it to nothing. You should, so there's fear in the name of Yahweh now when Moses is writing this. And so he's not going to play no games and keep on putting El Shaddai when you know it's Yahweh now. He put Yahweh because he knows how important the name is now, because he saw the power of Yahweh's name down there in Egypt before this was written. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but while Abraham was there, he said El Shaddai, but Moses just saying the name Yahweh.
Right, he's inserting the name for the title. Just like we would do when we're reading the King James Version, we just insert Yahweh's name when we see Lord, we insert Elohim when we see God. Moses is inserting what he saw.
Okay.
Because Moses actually corrects this after he saw this in the trip, like it's not corrected, but Moses makes it known after the third trip in the 6th chapter of Exodus, where he talks about, nobody before, Abraham and all them, they didn't know Yahweh by his name. They knew him as El Shaddai. So by his name, Yahweh, was he not known to them? So Moses makes it known that even though he wrote all of this, they didn't know Yahweh by his name. So he's inserting the name because he's familiar with it and he knows the power of Yahweh's name and how serious Yahweh takes his name. Because the 20th chapter of Exodus, where Yahweh is like going off about his name. 23rd chapter of Exodus, where Yahweh was like, don't even let it make mention of any other God out of your name but Yahweh. And so all this had already happened before Moses is getting all this with Abraham. So by the time he actually gets all of this in the vision and then writes it too, Yahweh made it real clear how he feel about his name. And so Moses is putting the name of Yahweh in it when Yahweh showed him that Abram was calling on El Shaddai. Yeah. Good observation. Any other questions or comments from the 13th chapter? Oh, we got a lot to cover.
One thing that I noticed that from what we've been reading so far, you see how with Abraham, it's like a dissension and an ascension, a descension and an ascension as far as his journeying. Like he was called out of the land of Chaldea, which is, Babylon or Upper Mesopotamia. And he's called down and he travels down. He goes through Canaan. I forgot the different places. It's Bethel and Hai.
Haran and Canaan.
Yeah. And so he travels. Yeah, and then he goes back up into Bethel and Hai and Canaan's land. So it's just you see a descension and then an ascension, a descension and an ascension. So I was just noticing that in his journeyings.
Now, most of his journey took place here in Canaan land, because even Babylon too, but even the Philistines are also in this up in Canaan land. He went down to Egypt when there was a famine, but for the most part, all of this that he was doing, all the traveling he was doing was back and forth through the land of Canaan, just walking the length and the breadth of it. Against familiar with it, but he always did a round trip, though, to your point. It was always around, because he always ended up back at Bethel between Hai and whatchamacallit. So, yeah, it was always a round trip for sure. Same thing he did with Moses, round trip at the mount. And that's the whole point. The gospel of reconciliation. Yahweh, the only one came down, only one going back. So round trip, reconciliation, photosynthesis, and earth, and all that. Dust we are, and dust we shall return. Yes, that's his pattern. All right, who wants to read the 14th chapter?
I'll read it. Okay. Genesis 14:1. And it came to pass in the days of Raphael, king of Shinar, Arak, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, that these made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinabab, king of Admah, and Shemabar, king of Zebiom, and king of Bela, which is Zor, All these were joined together in the vale of Siddim, which is the Salt Sea. 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. And in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and smote Rephaims and Ashtaroth, Karnaim and Zuzims and Ham, and the Emins in the plains of Kirathaim, and the Horites in their Mount Seir, unto the plains of Paran, which is by the wilderness. And they returned and came to En Mishpat, which is Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites that dwell in Hazazon Tamar. And there went out the king of Sodom, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zebulun, and the king of Bela, and the same is Zor. And they joined battle with them in the vale of Siddim, which Chedorlaomer, the king of Elam, with the title king of nations, and Aphraphael, king of Shinar, and Arak, king of Elasar, 4 kings with 5. And the vale of Siddim was full of slime pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there, and they remained fled to the mountains. And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals, and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. And there came one that had escaped, and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Esau, and brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abram. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants more than his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. And he divided himself against them and his servants by night, and smote them, and pursued them into Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot, and his goods, and the women also, and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer, and of the kings that were with him at the valley of Shaveh, which is the king's dale. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of El Elyon. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abraham of El Elyon, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be El Elyon, which hath delivered thine enemies into thine hand. And he gave tithes of all. And the king of Sodom said unto Abraham, Give me the persons, and take the goods to thyself. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up my hand unto Yahweh El Elyon, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take from a thread to a shoe latchet, that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou should have said, I have made Abram rich, save only that which the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men which went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, let them take their portion.
Mm-hmm. Very good. That's the 14th chapter. Anything in that one that you guys saw that stood out?
I'll just add something real quick. Well, this is where Abraham or Abram meets Melchizedek, and Melchizedek was the king and the priest, and Yahshua Messiah would later on come, he would be a king and priest after the order of Melchizedek forever. Yahshua Messiah having no beginning, no ending, because he's the, son of Yahweh. Whereas Melchizedek, they don't have a lineage where they have a birth date or a time that he died either. But he blessed Abraham, and then Abraham, he didn't have any children yet, and so in his loins was Isaac and Ishmael, and both of them received the both of them were blessed, because that's representing the Jew and the Gentile. So.
Ishmael being blessed. the blessing didn't go to Ishmael. But
I thought
what that was
because,
talking about as far as
go ahead.
no, I was under the impression that the reason why you pick up the Gentile too is because you always blessed him when he was uncircumcised, showing forth that he would bless the Jew and the Gentile. But I didn't. And I'm not saying that you're wrong or whatever. I just was looking at it a different way. I didn't look at the Ishmael and Isaac or both blessed because Ishmael was cast out, and Ishmael talked about as being bondage in Egypt and things like that. I just thought the blessed, since he was blessed when he was uncircumcised, is why that picks up the Gentiles too. But anyway, I'm not saying you're wrong. I just didn't look at it that way.
I'll read up on it, but if, according to the nations that were allowed to stay there in Canaan land when he was giving them their inheritance, they were the descendants of Ishmael.
I'm not saying you're wrong. No, I'm not saying you're wrong. I can see where you're coming from. I can see that too, but I'm saying I looked at it from a different light as far as the Gentiles. I agree with it because Ishmael actually also represents the angels that kept their first estate too. So I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying when I looked at the Jew, the blessing that he got from Melchizedek, blessing Jew and Gentile, was because he was uncircumcised. Just saying that's the way that I looked at it as far as the Gentiles. But I can see that principle too, as far as Ishmael too. All right, good, very good. Anybody else? All right, 15th chapter, one of my favorite chapters that I used to always go to.
All right,
Genesis
15. After these things, the word of Yahweh came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram said, Yahweh Elohim, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless? And the steward of my house is this Eleazar of Damascus. And Abram said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of Yahweh came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad and said, Look now toward heaven and count the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. And he believed in Yahweh, and he counted it to him for righteousness. And he said unto him, I am Yahweh that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give thee this land to inherit it. And he said, Yahweh, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said unto him, Take me an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another. But the birds divided he not. And when the birds of prey came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And it came to pass that when the sun went down, and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace, and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. In the same day, Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates, the Kenites and the Kenizzites and the Cadmonites, and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephaims, and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Girgashites and the Jebusites.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Anything in the 15th chapter that anybody wants to bring out or discuss?
I got a question about the 16th verse. How do you trace, or I know we've talked about it before, but the fourth generation, they should come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. What is that? What generation does that trace down to when we go through this?
What do you mean? The fourth generation from Abram?
Yes.
I don't understand the question.
So, like exactly what was he like telling him would happen in the fourth generation? Like he said that it's not yet
That's
full.
that's when Yahweh was going to deliver the children of Israel out of Egypt.
Okay.
So let me, the whole verse then. So in the fourth generation is when Yahweh said he was going to bring them up out of Egypt. We'll look at that in a minute. The other part of it, for the iniquity of the Amorites, is not yet full. The Amorites were in Canaan land. That's one of the nations that Yahweh destroyed, so that Israel could take Canaan land. So it wasn't time for the Amorites to be destroyed yet. Yahweh was going to wait till the fourth generation to destroy the Amorites. And so that's all the reason why he mentioned the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full, because that's one of the nations that Yahweh destroyed when he brought the fourth generation up out of Egypt. So when we look at those four generations, Abraham had Isaac, that's one generation. Isaac had Jacob or Jacob, that's the second generation. Jacob had the 12 sons, that's the third generation. And it was the next generation after that that Moses was born, because if you remember, when Moses was born, Joseph had died and all the other 12 original sons of Israel had already died off, because it said the Pharaoh that rose up didn't know Joseph at all. And so it's the fourth generation, which Moses was born to the fourth generation. And that's when Yahweh, came in to deliver them in the fourth generation from Abraham up out of the land of Egypt. And at that time, when it was time for the Amorites to be destroyed, now their iniquity is full. Now Yahweh is, done with the mess now. Same thing with the flood. He said the man thought was evil continually, that man's days be 120 years. And that's when he was going to destroy them, even though they were evil and he was ready, going to destroy them anyway. It wasn't full yet until that 120th year when he decided to go ahead and just wipe them all out. The same thing with the Amorites.
Okay. That makes sense.
Good. All right. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about Genesis 15 and 18. It reads, "In the same day Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is the river of Egypt?
I would assume it's the Red Sea. I wouldn't know without looking at it, but if you, because it can be kind of confusing, because it seems like Egypt is down here, but then they were given Canaan land, so it's like that's a long ways away. But if you remember, there were 2.5 tribes that received their inheritance on this side of Jordan. And so the inheritance is going to be from the river of Egypt all the way to the great river Euphrates. So they occupied land here, all the way from here, all the way through Canaan land. The children of Israel occupied, because you had Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh that received their inheritance on this side of the Jordan River. But without looking at what you call, see exactly where the river of Egypt is, I wouldn't really be able to answer that question right off.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because a long time ago I asked somebody in class if they knew where the location of the Garden of Eden. And I was looking on the internet the other day, and it tells me it is clear from the Bible that the Garden of Eden has an exact location. At the head of the Persian Gulf is southern Mesopotamia, now Iraq. where the Tigris, Euphrates run into the Persian Sea. And in Armenia, the rivers are Euphrates, Tigris, Caspus, and Ulai in southern Iraq. Does that make sense, or?
I guess so. I mean, you're talking about where the Garden of Eden is located?
Yeah, southern Iraq at the mouth of the Persian Gulf.
Mm-hmm. It could be.
Yeah, I've been curious about this for a long time.
It's not the way it was when Adam and Eve was there, though. It was flooded out. Everything was destroyed also. So just like Jerusalem is not the place to worship anymore, neither is the Garden of Eden, holy like it used to be anymore either. So it's just another place like California would be now. There's no significance in it other than when Yahweh was doing that in that particular age and dispensation to show forth the principle and things like that. But yeah, more than likely,
yeah.
I would say so.
Yeah, I've always been curious about that.
Yeah, I used to be too. Before the internet came about, I used to have that question.
When I look at that verse where he just said, the 18 said, the seed I will give unto his seed. And then when it says all the way from the rivers of Egypt unto the rivers of Euphrates, I think like that's representing Yahshua Messiah. Am I in any point like correct? Because when you talk about the seed and him taking over the land is, for me, that land is Yahshua Messiah. He's the one that's going to cover like the whole land, because that's like going according, like you can run that according to the tabernacle. So I'm looking at it that Yahshua is that land going from the bottom of that Egyptian river all the way up to the Euphrates. So that's the land that he's going to cover, or he's going to give to the seed. So that's what I look at it.
Okay. I hadn't looked at it like that, but okay. I can follow what you're saying. But specifically in the 18th verse that he's talking about giving his seed, he's talking about Israel, giving Israel the land, because that's the fourth generation that he's going to give the land to. It wasn't Isaac, it wasn't Jacob, it wasn't even the 12 sons of Jacob, but it was the fourth generation, that seed. And that's why he said, out of Egypt have I called my son, singular. And it said that, the seed was counted in Isaac, out of Isaac, how you call his son, things like that. I mean, out of Egypt, that's not his son, but the seed or the promised seed was talking about Isaac. Well, it was through Isaac, and it was talking about the Messiah. The seed is talking about the Messiah. But the land that I would look at, the seed talking about Yahshua, but the land that I would be looking at will be the land that's like into the mind. And that's the land that he's given to Yahshua. Yahshua is, let this mind be in you that was in Yahshua the Messiah. And so once he gives, because Yahshua said, all that Yahweh has given me, I've lost none of them. He's not talking about these physical bodies. He's talking about the soul of the man, or the mind of the man. That's what has to be made one with Yahshua. So the seed is Yahshua, and the land is the mind, because if you look at the tabernacle pattern or even the migratory pattern like you're talking about, you can see how Egypt is painted dark down here. This is like into the carnal mind. But after the gospel is preached, or after this lamb was taken out and the blood was put on the door and the lamb was in them, then you go through some things and you're tested and tried, and the old you has to die off. This is like into part of your mind. And when the old you dies off, it's Yahshua in you that takes you on over into the promised land, or into the realization of the thing. And so the land is your mind, and the seed is Yahshua, if you want to look at it in principle like that. That's why I would run it probably. But yeah, that's a good point. Very, very good.
Because we got to remember, when it says seeds, a lot of people think it's with an S, but it says seed. So we got to keep that in mind.
And Galatians talks about too, the promised seed was talking about Yahshua, not Isaac. It said in Isaac in Isaac shall the seed be called, but not Isaac being the seed that's called, but in Isaac shall thy seed, singular, be called. And that seed is talking about Yahshua the Messiah. You can read that in the 3rd chapter of Galatians. It specifically says that Yahshua was the seed, the promised seed that was promised unto Abraham. And Yahshua said, so Abraham prayed to see my day. He saw it and was glad. That is the seed that Yahweh promised unto him. All right, cool. Anything else in the 15th chapter? No, we're probably not going to get to 20.
I wanted to ask, the gentleman was talking about in the 18th verse, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates, unto the river Euphrates. The Nile River, we know that Egypt sat on the Nile River, and the Nile River runs, I mean, that's like the longest river, one of the longest rivers in that area is the Nile River. So I'm not sure, but I don't know. I'm just thinking from where it's located, it sounds like it would be the Nile River, but I'm not sure.
Gotcha. All right. 16th chapter. Anybody want to read that one for me?
16th chapter. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold now, Yahweh hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abraham hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her handmaid, the Egyptian, and Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Yahweh judge between me and thee. But Abram said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is thine hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. And the angel of Yahweh found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence comest thou? And whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. And the angel of Yahweh said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of Yahweh said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of Yahweh said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because Yahweh hath heard thy affliction. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. And she called the name of Yahweh that spake unto her, Thou Elohim seest me. For she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Bir La Haroi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bir. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son, which Hagar bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram.
All right, thank you. Let's see. And then the holy name, it says in the 13th verse, it says, and she called the name of Yahweh that spake unto her El Roy, which means the El that seeth. And so she didn't know Yahweh's name either. It was El something, El Elyon, El Shaddai, El Roy, all, what Elohim means to be. So that's, she called him El Roy, proving that they did not know Yahweh's name at that time. All right, anything in the 16th chapter that anybody saw that stood out or that they want to discuss or ask questions about?
Water and spirit. I mean, spirit and yeah.
I have something. This is
Okay.
Phyllis of Oakland, California. Hayward, California. I just noticed for the first time that Abraham didn't get a chance to name Ishmael, and I always thought he did, but he didn't. It said that she was able to name Ishmael because, Yahweh had given her the name.
Mm-hmm. Well, it said that, yeah, true, right. So the angel told her what his name was going to be, and Abram named him Ishmael. How would Abram know to name him Ishmael? Because
Right,
Yahweh had already
right.
set it up from the beginning. Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. So what I'm saying is that, in other words, it didn't come out of the baby's name, didn't come out of his mouth. It came out of her mouth. It had to have come out of her mouth. So, I just noticed that for the first time. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yahweh running the whole show. Every name was written in the book of life before anybody came forth. So we can't even name our children something different than what Yahweh already named them. Mm-hmm. Jeremiah talked about that before he was formed in his mother's belly. Yahweh knew him. Okay, so Abram was 86 years old when he had Ishmael. He was 85 years old because he was 10 years after he came into the land of Canaan is when Sarah gave Hagar to him. And then the next year is when he had Ishmael. So he was 85 years old when she got pregnant, and then 86 years old when he had Ishmael. All right. Anything else stood out to anybody in the 16th chapter? So Yahweh is declaring too that the Ishmaelites will still have a place in Canaan land too. In the 12th verse where it says, and he will be a wild man, his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. And so, of course, that's determining that he will be still having a place in the land of Canaan once Yahweh gives it to his Abram's promised seed. So, all right, next chapter. Well, I think we got time for one more. 17th chapter of Genesis. Anybody want to read that one?
I got it.
Okay. Excuse me. I'm sorry. One more thing, Carla. I just noticed also, it just came to my mind about how, that's Ishmael and Isaac. And then you have Cain and Abel, kind of sort of the same scenario, Cain being a wild man and Ishmael too. So I just thought about that. And then you have the two differences in the boys. Okay, right. That's it.
Right. Those principles have to go side by side all the way down to the end of time. Very good. All right. Okay, Amber, we're ready.
Okay. And when Abram was 90 years old and 9, Yahweh appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am El Shaddai. Walk before me and be perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and thee and will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and Elohim talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of a multitude of nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of a multitude of nations have I made thee. And I will make thee exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee and thy seed after thee in their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be Elohim unto thee and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land of thy sojournings, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their Elohim. And Elohim said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. This is my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man child among you shall be circumcised. And ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a sign of the covenant betwixt me and you. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every male in your generations. He that is born in the house or brought with money of any stranger, which is not of thy seed. He that is born in thy house and he that is bought with thy money must needs be circumcised. And my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised male whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. And Elohim said unto Abraham, As for Sarah thy wife, thou shalt not call her Sarah, for her name is Sarah. And I will bless her and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her. And she shall become a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed, and said in his heart, Shall a son be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? And Abraham said unto Elohim, Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. And Elohim said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. And he left off talking with him, and Elohim went up from Abraham. And Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in his house, and all that were bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin in the selfsame day, as Elohim had said unto him. And Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. In the still same day was Abraham circumcised and Ishmael his son. And all the men of his house born in the house and bought with money of the stranger were circumcised with him.
Very good. All right. Anything sticks out in this chapter for everyone?
Yeah, Yahweh also gave that name too before everything.
Mm-hmm. What does Abraham mean?
You said, what does Abraham mean?
What does the name Abraham mean?
I don't remember.
Says it right here. Yep. 5th verse. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, semicolon. For a father of many nations have I made thee. So that's the explanation of his name. That's why he changed his name to Abraham, because that Abraham means father of many nations. All right. In the 8th verse, I thought that was interesting. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan. Now remember, Canaan was Ham's son, and Yahweh said, "Cursed be Canaan." Canaan is the third part, so that represents the third part of the stars of heaven that were cast out of heaven. So you got the third part that was cast out, and so Yahweh is actually going to cast those nations out of Canaan land and give Israel the land and the houses that they didn't build and the crops that they didn't plant and things like that. They were going to take the place of the third part that was cursed of Noah's 3 sons. Just like he talked about in Ezekiel, he's going to take the third part and bring them through the fire and pretty much give them the place in heaven to replace the third part that was cast out. So I just thought that was interesting. He said he's going to give them the whole entire land of Canaan, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, because these things are talking about spiritual principles. So what happened in the spirit has to manifest in the flesh. So I thought that was interesting. Any other points you might see in the 17th chapter?
Too many principles.
Yeah.
I know, right? It's a million of them.
Like, how can you talk about
It's a lot
one?
of them. Right, true. That is true.
I mean,
Okay.
this is
So
how we can prove. This is how we can prove how old Ishmael was, or how far apart in age Ishmael and Isaac were, because of the 21st through 25th verses.
Right, true. Because Ishmael was 13 when Abraham was 99 years old, and the very next year is when he had Isaac. So when Isaac was born, Ishmael was 14 years old, and after Isaac was weaned, which is after a year old, is when Ishmael was cast out. So Ishmael was cast out at the age of 15.
Mm-hmm.
That's when he was cast out. They were 15 years apart, and so that's when Dr. Kinley, talked about Ishmael being 40 years old at the time Isaac was offered up on the altar, because Isaac was 25 years old when he was offered up, and saying Ishmael was 40, because they're 15 years apart. That's how he broke it down. God has to go back and look at it some more to even explain it more in detail. And my husband was talking about how with the flood, Dr. Kimmy talked about, the ark was 15 cubits or 15 feet above the highest mountain, and how Dr. Kimmy talked about that 15 representing the when Abraham had to cast out Isaac at the age of 15. I can't remember exactly how he was going through, but the 15 was significant as to why he was 15 when he was cast out. Yep. Okay. Well, we didn't get a chance to finish all of it, so if you guys want to catch up with us, we did read through the 20th chapter, and then for the next time we meet up, we're going to have Genesis 21 through 30 to read, and we'll go through the different chapters again and have some questions and answers and discussions and things like that. And then if we have more time, maybe the next class, if not the one after that, if we have more time, then we'll kind of start recalling some things and give you guys like a 10-minute pass the baton type of thing, where the first person starts with the very first thing that Moses saw in the very first vision that he had in the second trip, and do it in order. And then the next person picks up where they left off to kind of do, just kind of do the whole thing in order. So we're going to practice that too in the next couple of classes that we have, so be prepared to do that. If anybody wants to join us next Monday, we will have our private lessons class that we have on Mondays. We have a basics and foundation class every other Monday. And the opposite Monday, we have a new class that we started called private lessons. And the assignment, the first assignment was to look up, different things. But the second assignment that we're going to have for next Monday, it's on the board. It's on the screen if you want to look at it and see if that's something you want to do or participate in. You can screenshot it if you want to and kind of see if that's something that you want to do. But we have, that class is strictly research. It's a strictly research class. It's only for 1 hour every opposite Monday of the basics and foundations class. We got a couple of new people in the class. That class is going really well. What it does for the new people too, instead of us, lecturing them and telling us how this is wrong and how that's wrong, they're able to do the research on their own, and they can actually see how the letter J is only this old, and how as they're researching these different things, they're coming to the light of it themselves, and they have been having a really good time with it and really enjoying it. So we have definitions, research, and a reading assignment for every class. And so we have different definitions, different things to research. One of them that I'm super interested in is the last research part of it, but the definitions are Jew and Hebrew, Gentile, precept, covenant, law, grace, faith, promise, sin, institute, and fulfill. And the different things that we're going to be researching are what are the 10 commandments and how many laws did Yahweh give Israel? Who were the sons of Jacob? When did Yahweh change Jacob's name to Israel? Name the 12 tribes of Israel. What was the promise When was the promise made, and to who was it made? Who was given a law? What was the law? When was it given, and why was it given? And then the last part, it says, choose one of the following religions and find out what they teach as salvation. We have Catholic, Muslim, Hebrew Israelites, Baptist, Protestant, or Jehovah's Witnesses. You could pick any other religion if you know one is not these specifically, but pick a different religion and find out what they teach that you have to do to be saved. And then the reading assignment is Genesis 9th chapter through 10th chapter, Acts 10th chapter, Romans 4th through 5th chapter, and Galatians the 3rd chapter. So that's the assignment for next Monday. And if you guys want to participate, you can send me a text message or email, and I can shoot you that link because it's a different link than any of the other classes. More than happy to. That one is recorded, but it's not posted on YouTube. We do post it privately, and only those who are in the class can actually go back and view it if they want to add their email address to be able to go back and view that class from time to time. So just to make everybody more comfortable with sharing and speaking and talking and things like that. Sometimes people can kind of clam up when they feel like they're being recorded or feel like they're going to be on YouTube or other people going to see it. So it makes it more and more informal. All right. Any questions or comments before we conclude? The assignment for the basics and foundations classes, and we got 2 weeks to read Genesis 21 through 30. And we'll meet up again in 2 weeks, same time. If there is nothing else, we'll conclude with the doxology, taken from the last 2 verses of the book of Jude. All right. Now unto him that is able to keep you from falling and to present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy. To the only wise Elohim, our Savior, through Yahshua the Messiah, our Sovereign, belong glory and majesty, dominion and power, both now and ever. Let us all say hallelujah.
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 Very good.
Hallelujah. Praise Yahshua.
All right.
Joshua.
Praise Yahshua. Thank you guys for participating in